we have got some monumental stories. Hey, Senator Bo Watson is getting filthy rich off taxpayer money, and he's not the only one in the General Assembly who's cashing in with your tax dollars. Tennessee State Rep John Ragan says lots of Democrats are voting in GOP primaries, which we have known this for a long time. Who's trying to prevent this? Not the GOP. We'll talk about it and get into it. Senator Todd Gardenhire, post-primary win, defends his illegal immigration voting record to disgruntled Republicans who ask questions. Plebes should not be allowed to ask questions of the great Senator Gardenhire, although I'm going to also give him some kudos later on about a few things he's looking into. Abortion advocacy groups like Parenthood plan to flip seats in Tennessee. I'm not buying it. Expect Republicans and Democrats to compete in 8 state races this November. Some are close, some aren't. Senator Mark Pody wants to put further limits on the governor's fake emergency powers that caused so much damage to so many people during the pandemic. We need to do this. Ford announces, imagine that, a delay in creating these electric vehicles that they lost $2 billion trying to create just last year, after we give them all the money and the power. And U.S. Supreme Court upholds lower court's block on Biden's Title IX rule, changes for Tennessee and other states. I am Brandon Lewis here with a TNCon Big 7 weekend update. Guys, I am glad to be here, glad that you are joining me. Hey, listen, if you want to get the only conservative news that is going to come to you in the state of Tennessee, that's not corporately funded, that is not completely biased by the leadership's spin on issues, then you've got to go to TennesseeConservativeNews.com and hit that support button and help us out so we can keep reaching folks like you. Hit the subscribe button so you can get our free newsletter. And finally, you can text the word news to 423-205-5600. And do follow us on Gab, Getter, Truth, MeWe, Rumble, and especially here on Twitter/X. Probably the only free speech platform of any significance on planet Earth anymore. As an American, I never thought I'd say that, but that's where we are. Guys, I want to get into this first story. And I've been covering this for a while. And occasionally the mainstream media has even asked a few questions about this. And even the Tennessee Holler wants to see an end to this on both the Democrat and the Republican side. What am I talking about? I'm talking about these state senators and these state reps who are fleecing taxpayers, and they got this tremendous conflicts of interest. Let me break it down for you. So Bo Watson has a wife named Nicole. Nicole originally was a lobbyist for like volunteer fire departments or something similar, I'm given to understand. Well, she gets involved in the Ford Motor Company corporate welfare scheme to give them billions of dollars with very few strings attached to build these electric vehicles nobody wants out in West Tennessee that apparently are not going to be built on schedule now, and ultimately I think probably won't be built at all. And she gets paid hundreds of thousands, maybe even millions of dollars to get this billion-dollar deal through, and her husband sits on the finance committee, right? Later, she gets into the next corporate welfare racket, which is giving billions of dollars, millions of dollars to millionaires and billionaires at the Titans Stadium. That money goes from the Titans and Ford Motor Company into Nicole's pocket and then into the Watson family bank account. When we report on this story, the comments are all like this is a patent conflict of interest. This is not correct. When we have polled and surveyed people, they say this is bad. But Bo Watson can't seem to see it. Tennessee Republican leadership seems to think it's okay. I don't know about you, but I'm going to tell you two things. Okay, we're going to do an investigative series. I've got sources saying that we've got a bunch of folks in the Tennessee General Assembly who are cashing in a similar way. Two questions. If you're married out there, if you've got any money, any influence in any group, it could be your church, it could be your small group, it could be the PTA, it could be coaching your kid's soccer game. If your spouse goes and talks to an audience of people that you've got lots of influence over, do they treat that person differently because they're your spouse? Of course they do. Of course they do. People treat me differently because of my wife in certain circles, because they respect and appreciate her. And then people treat my wife completely differently because she is my wife, because of what I do politically. And to think that you can send your wife up there to lobby for billions of dollars that are wildly unpopular, by the way. When you survey this corporate welfare stuff all across the state, Republican primary voters don't like it. And in fact, a plurality of Tennesseans don't like it. So it's bad enough that you're enriching yourself, but it gets even worse when it's something that people don't even want and they think the whole process of picking winners and losers is corrupt. For something like freaking sports. Sports is not a government function. Millionaires and billionaires playing with a ball is not a government function. That needs to stand on its own 2 feet, and hardworking Tennessee taxpayers and business owners should not have to freaking float the bill when only 1% probably of Tennesseans will ever step foot inside the place. Number 2, is your spouse's money your money? Here's what I know. I work, my wife stays at home. She's luckily, I think she's got the unlucky end of the deal, rather, because it's hard being a mama, and to keep the house up, and to raise the children, and to educate them, and to be their spiritual mentor, and to take care of me. It's a tough gig. But when the money goes into our joint bank account, she gets to spend it. And when my wife has ran into money, I get to spend it. And so this whole notion that Bo Watson has no conflict of interest when his wife is getting money that probably ultimately gets deposited in a joint bank account if you're doing it the way that you're supposed to is ridiculous. Ridiculous. And there are other state reps and state senators in the General Assembly that are doing this same exact thing. It is unethical. It is a conflict of interest. I cannot believe there's not bipartisan support to eliminate this, but I'm telling you, it just highlights the corruption of what's going on in the General Assembly. And I'm telling you that I am going to be, we're going to be digging into this. We're going to be digging into this in an investigative series. Closed circuit transmission to Phil Williams. Maybe we could even team up on something. Closed circuit transmission to the Tennessee Holler. I think we could team up on this. It is time for this to end in the state of Tennessee. And if primary voters knew on a postcard, a social media message, a ringless voicemail, a text message that somebody is lining their pockets because their spouse or their son or daughter or whatever is a lobbyist, and that money's making it back into the pocket of the state representative or the senator, they wouldn't vote for it. They wouldn't like it. I can guarantee you that. It makes people very weak that do this. Very weak, very easy to be replaced, attacked, primaried. So if folks want to do it, I guess that, money is the thing, but it may come back to bite you at some point. Next story. Tennessee State Rep John Ragan challenges loss in GOP primary after data shows illegal crossover votes. State Representative John Ragan has officially challenged his loss in the District 33 primary race after more than 1,000 voters in Anderson County voted on the Republican ballot despite not being legitimate Republicans. There's this huge push by Republican leadership to continue to allow Democrats to vote in Republican primaries without having to declare, not having to register as a member of one party or the other. John Crawford in the House killed it the last time. Jason, if you would, I want you to give me the history of everybody who has voted against and killed these bills that would have stopped Democrats voting in Republican primaries. And I kid you not, this is a prevailing piece of wisdom in the Republican Party. David Queen, he's a SEC guy, I believe, argued with me forever about why Democrats should be allowed to vote in Republican primaries. A lot of state party and county party folks think that this is a good thing because they've been told it's a good thing by rhino legislators. It's terrible. Reagan lost the August 1st primary race to Rick Scarborough by 258 votes. After the election was officially certified by the county, Ragan filed his challenge with the Tennessee Republican Party Primary Board. Now look, closed-circuit transmission to Scott Golden and everybody that sits on this committee. And guys, I know there are some people that sit on the committee that watch this show, listen to our coverage. Would you please forward this to them, maybe just this segment? GOP leadership up in Nashville has thumbed their nose at the SEC and Scott Golden. Scott Golden went down there, to his credit, on bended knee, asking, begging GOP leadership to stop the process of allowing Democrats to vote in Republican primaries in Tennessee. They ignored him. The SEC has pleaded with them over and over again. They ignored him. They ignore you. If you're on the SEC, just let me get this to you. Cameron Sexton and Randy McNally and Bill Lee think that you are a bunch of hicks and hayseeds for wanting that. Because they are not Republicans, they're corporatists. I think most people on the SEC are true Republicans. You know what would send a loud, clear message, guys? A damned loud, clear message to Republican leadership in Tennessee? You go ahead and put John Ragan back in his position, and you nullify these Democrats that have crossed over. I bet that gets their attention. They might pass legislation if they think that y'all are going to occasionally have a spine and a backbone. Now listen, if you tried to do that, you're going to get calls from state reps. You're going to get calls from state senators. They're going to tell you this is a bad idea. They're going to tell you this isn't a good thing, because what they like to do is intimidate people, browbeat people behind the scenes. I hear it all the time. There is not a conversation that is had between 2 or 3 people in the state of Tennessee that ultimately doesn't get around to my ears. People tell me. And that's why I've always just told everybody in private the same thing I tell people in public. Then that way I don't even care. What I tell you, you and I talking right here, it's exactly how I talk to everybody else about every issue. I'm an open book. But if you're on that SEC, you need to get rid of this stuff. The challenge refers to state law that says only bona fide members of the party are allowed to vote in the primary race, but the state uses an open primary system in which voters can choose the primary ballot of their choice. That's ridiculous. In his challenge, Ragan says the crossover votes totaled almost 20% of votes cast in the primary election. Pay attention, guys. Email your state senators, email your state reps, and say, we freaking need to close the primaries. But they don't want to close the primaries because they are at the top the most liberal members of the House of Representatives and the Senate. Because the moment that you start voting like a conservative, and not even like a conservative, like if you just poll your constituents and vote the way they tell you to vote on issues like illegal immigration, corporate welfare, growing the government, all that stuff, right to life, Second Amendment, when you start voting the way your constituents actually want you to vote, guess what happens? You get ostracized. You get moved down to the bottom. So the only way you can climb in Tennessee politics is to abandon your principles on the way to the top. This is from Ragan, the apparent number of unethical crossover votes gives a very obvious indication of blatantly flaunting the integrity of the party primary system and Tennessee law. This is immoral and illegal conduct, must not be allowed to stand. It can't, Republican Party. It's bad enough that we don't even stand beside our platform in Tennessee. It's bad enough we vote contrary to the platform. Constantly, continually, in leadership. Do we have to add insult to injury by letting crap like this happen and just laying down? I'm telling you guys, if the SEC doesn't do something about this, then the ones that vote against it need to be replaced in the upcoming elections. I'm going to start working. I'm slow to get around to some of this stuff, but I'm going to start figuring out who's conservative on this SEC and who's not, and we need to start replacing people. And I'm going to put out a list. Next election. I'm going to actually dig in and try to cover these SEC races. I hate to do it, like I have nothing else better to do. Anderson County Democrat acknowledged the attack in a Facebook post on Tuesday, August 2nd, celebrating, quote, listen, Anderson County Democrats, from their own lips. Anderson County voters came together last night to defeat State Representative John Ragan. In the primary? The primary? Do you think this guy's not playing around in the Republican primary? Sending Democrats out to vote against John Ragan because he's super conservative? The chair of the Anderson County Republican Party is urging concerned citizens from all of Tennessee to support John Ragan's challenge by emailing Scott Golden. Guys, you need to email your state executive committee members first. Scott Golden last. If Scott Golden gets calls from Cameron Sexton and Randy McNally and Bill Lee saying don't do anything with this, that's what Scott Golden's going to do. It has to be through the SEC. Guys, if you know somebody that's on the SEC, reach out to them and say, this is a bunch of BS. Let's send a freaking message. If Tennessee Republicans cannot manage their own primaries, they can't manage anything at all. Next story. Senator Todd Gardenhire, post-primary win, defends illegal immigration voting record to disgruntled Republicans. Gardenhire recently was questioned by a group of local Republicans who took issue with his voting record on illegal immigration, specifically mentioned were the taxpayer-funded benefits Gardenhire voted for last session. Gardenhire sponsored a bill to give illegal aliens free college tuition in exchange for teaching. He teamed up with a Democrat. You know, I like Todd on so many ways. Like he put an end to that ridiculous gun grab special session from Bill Lee. What is it? Tennessee, Concerned Tennessee's Voices for Safer Tennessee, like this fake Democrat rhino pack that pretends to be Republican. So he stood up to that crap. He's going after, and these are positive points for Todd Gardenhire. He's going after the closing of the records on the Covenant school shooting, which is ridiculous. The whole premise behind the gun grab that Bill Lee wanted to do had to do with the Covenant school shooting, but we're not allowed to know why the lady did what she did. Come on now. So I give him credit for that, but his record on illegal immigration isn't the best. He justified the logic for the bill by stating there just aren't enough teachers in Tennessee. We need people from the same culture teaching these kids, which begs the question, why are we educating at the tune of $700 million a year, which is probably now up to $1 billion? Why are we spending that money educating illegal immigrants? Why do we allow it? I mean, basically, Todd's logic is we got so many illegal aliens in our school that we're funding at your expense that we need to go hire illegal aliens to teach them. Back up a couple steps, logically. To alleviate this problem, Gardenhire stated that based on the philosophy he shared with former Governor Haslam, which is always something you should look out for, he decided it was a better idea just to allow Spanish-speaking undocumented students to be trained as teachers. Gardenhire described anyone who feels that illegal alien children should not receive the benefit at taxpayer expense has hate in their heart. That is a tactic of the left. When you talk about the logical consequences of bad policy, they like to call names. It's a problem. In school systems that are failing to teach kids to read and write and do basic arithmetic in 13 freaking years. 13 years. Graduate these people, functionally illiterate, hardly any skills, can't be employed, got a false sense of achievement, have a false sense of what the world's going to be like because they have just been passed from grade to grade to grade. The ship's on fire. We don't need to be putting kegs of gunpowder in it, right? He went on to state that despite people's opinions, we needed to solve the problem. Despite the consistent pro-illegal immigration policy position taken over the last years, he still managed to get reelected. Of course, he got reelected because we didn't have anybody decent run against him. I'm going to have to step up my recruitment efforts. Step up my recruitment efforts. We had somebody that didn't run a campaign that ran against Gardenhire. Barely put out any yard signs, didn't knock any doors, didn't raise any money, wouldn't even talk to a group of people for more than like 2 minutes and then sit down. Like, you cannot win a race like that. And while I'm on my soapbox, if you're a grassroots leader out there, we're going to be putting on our Conservative Candidates Academy. It's going to be coming up this spring because we want to get started on this stuff early this year. If you're a conservative incumbent, you need to come to this. If John Ragan and Frank Nicely, I don't agree with the crossover voting or anything, but if those gentlemen had ran a more updated, modern, engaged, properly advised campaign, they would not have lost, and they would have known what to do, and we would have had a strategy for how to do it. There's a big, huge difference between being politically involved, running a grassroots group where people get together and talk and advocate and maybe even go do some citizen lobbying up in Nashville. God knows we need it. I mean, Bo Watson's wife gets paid more as a single lobbyist, which later gets paid to Bo, than all the grassroots lobbyists. Like, you could probably pay every grassroots lobbyist, what few there are, $20,000 a year on if we just took Nicole's money that she probably gets paid and divided it up. Because there's only a few, probably a dozen, that actually get up there and actively and consistently do it. So there's a difference between that and having the professional experience and the background and the track record to run a good campaign. Being passionate about policy does not translate into the mechanics of winning an election. We've got to get that through the grassroots community's head. We can be a little stubborn sometimes about these issues. I'm going to make this one brief. Abortion advocacy groups like Planned Parenthood aim to flip seats in Tennessee Legislature, but some believe low voter turnout will help them do just that. It does. The lower the voter turnout is, the easier it is for small amounts of money to make a big difference. Voter turnout earlier this month across the state was an abysmal 13.9%. I wish it was lower. I've said this before. If you're too dumb to figure out when the elections are, once you start seeing yard signs pop up out of the ground like tiger lilies in the spring, and you can't figure out when to vote or how to vote, we don't need you voting. That's just my opinion. These reports indicate that although registration numbers have trended upward since 2016, fewer and fewer Tennessees head to the polls, especially during primary elections. The organization announced its initiative to flip some of the Republican supermajority seats, according to Democrat Representative, I got to figure out how to pronounce this lady's name, Afton Ben? I'm going to call you Afton. There are 5 seats the Democrats see as flippable. Republican Representative John Gillespie, Shelby County, Jeff Burkhart, Clarksville, Robert Stevens, Mike Sparks of Smyrna, Elaine Davis, District 18 of Knox are all targets. Organizations like Planned Parenthood, like lots of other organizations, outside money. I've never seen the amount of outside money, outside special interest money being spent in these races. And of course, we did the Follow the Money report, which told us what we already knew, 90+%, and it's really more like 95% of Republican leadership's money in Tennessee comes from special interests outside the district. Guys, let me ask you a question, plainly. Do you see any other news outlets covering these stories and bringing this kind of stuff to you? Are you seeing that? Is that happening? Because I'm not seeing it. We're the only freaking people that can't be bought, sold, and paid for in Tennessee media, because I don't make any money doing this. I was telling somebody the other night that it really makes it easy for me. Hey, I'm a volunteer. I'm going to drink some coffee. You like that mug? That's not very masculine, is it? It's got flowers on it. This is one of my favorite mugs, though. My wife gets on to me sometimes because I'll wear floral patterns. I don't care. I like it. I like to look pretty. I like to feel pretty, right? But anyway, I look around at these media outlets, and when like 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80% of your money comes from large corporations, like, you can't tell the truth. Any more than the Republican Party, where most of their money comes from large corporations on the leadership side, can tell the truth. You're beholden. Once you start getting that money, you are beholden. But because I don't make any money doing this, and because I don't have to worry about corporations because people like you freaking give, I can tell you the truth that nobody else in the state of Tennessee can. Guys, if you want us to keep doing this, go to TennesseeConservativeNews.com/support. Mail your checks to P.O. Box 625, Signal Mountain, Tennessee 37377. If you get $50 or more, or a $10 recurring gift or more, you will get, oh my goodness, this proud Tennessee conservative tumbler even smells like freedom. Smells like freedom and liberty with a hint of individual capitalism. It is. You can use it, turn it upside down. You can even use it as a candle holder. It's got multiple uses. doorstop. It's pretty solid. You could probably club an intruder in the head. I'm telling you. And then you could drink your beverage out of it. You'll get this. You'll also get this these 2 bumper stickers. Now, the bumper stickers may vary. I don't know what our stock is right now. Don't California, my Tennessee. And stop feeding the rhinos. God knows. We need to stop feeding those rhinos. And you'll get this directory, which we're going to have to update here soon, of your elected officials for quick and handy reference, guys. Why ain't they more conservative media outlets, Brandon? Cause nobody wants to advertise because it's all corporate advertising, and a lot of conservative business owners, unfortunately, are too afraid to advertise, or don't have a business that is statewide, which is very frequent for people that are small business owners. Our publication is statewide, so I depend on you. So write us a check, $100, $200, $300, $1,000, $2,000, $5,000. I get them in the mail, believe it or not. $10 a month, $5 a month. Boy, it all adds up. Go to P.O. Box 625. P.O. Box 625? That's right. Signal Mountain, Tennessee 37377, or TennesseeConservativeNews.com/support. Enough begging for money, but gosh, it is necessary. I went to see, as an aside here, I went to go speak at the Conservative Club of Tellico. And I'm so busy, I haven't even posted any pictures. I've got them on my phone. I'm going to try to do it this weekend. I used to be Johnny on the spot with this stuff, but as our organization has grown and as my responsibilities at my other company has grown, guys, sometimes I just drop the ball because I'm a volunteer just like you are. I got a young family. I got a company to run. I got, responsibilities. But, said I get these messages from Brandon, and often if they come from him, he's asking for money, which is true. Because that's what runs on this. And I'm telling you, you need to support your conservative grassroots organizations financially, your local clubs, candidates, causes. Don't be cheap, guys. When there's a vacuum, what is it? Power abhors a vacuum. Power abhors a vacuum. And in Tennessee, there is a financial vacuum left by conservative Christians that do not invest politically. And then they wonder why the politics of their state are so bad. Because you got to get off your wallet. You got to get off the couch and do things that make a difference. Listening to Fox News for 16 hours a week is not going to change anything. Listening to podcasts for 5 hours a week is not going to change anything. But you physically getting out there and being active and giving money changes things. I guarantee it. Expect Republicans and Democrats to compete in 8 state races. I've already read this one. We know who they're going after. No, okay. No, this is not the same article. I'm sorry. Sometimes I get confused. With less than 100 days until the election, I wish we could afford a teleprompter. I could put this over here and look at it. I don't know. It might be weird. With less than 100 days to the election, Tennessee state Republicans and Democrats have narrowed their election maps to a handful of seats that each party sees as a potential flip. Republicans have limited opportunities to expand their caucus. I've said this before. We need more Democrats up in Nashville. I firmly believe that. Terrible. Can't believe you'd say it. If I ever run for office, this is what they'll put on a card. Brandon says he supports more Democrats being in Nashville. Because those are the kind of races that Bob Davis and Ward Baker run. They're completely disingenuous. Can't talk about the policy issues. Put people in tin hats. Whatever else. It's the same old dirty, nasty stuff that happens year after year. But that's what they'll put on there. But I mean it. And why am I saying it? This is the context they'll always leave out. I do believe that if the margins were thinner in Tennessee, and if we had a freedom caucus of some description, of conservatives that actually held together, then they couldn't just shove through the corporate agenda 24/7. I think they'd have to do some stuff on illegal immigration. I think they'd have to do real school choice options that don't have strings attached to them, that just give people back their tax money. But because we got this massive quorum meeting supermajority, they don't have to do anything. Democrats have nominated Kathy Lennon, a former school board member and teacher, to face Michelle Renault. She ain't going to win. Hoping her local name recognition and popularity can overcome party identification. It ain't going to happen, honey. Not going to happen. Not in my backyard. Not in my backyard. I'm very territorial. When I pee on a bush, stay away from the bush. Republican House Majority Leader William Lambert of Portland said his caucus was, quote, focused on every race a Republican is running in. And they were focused on some of them during the primary, probably to get rid of conservatives, would be my guess. Democrat House Caucus Chair Ray Clemens of Nashville said his party's position issues like on abortion and education allowed them to compete in more races than initially anticipated. Democrats see seats in Memphis, Knoxville, Clarksville, Smyrna, and possible Signal Mountain as up for grabs. Signal Mountain ain't up for grabs, bud. You might be able to make some inroads in these other cities. Man, I tell you what, these cities are what run the Republican Party in Tennessee. If it weren't for rural conservative legislators, if we just did what the folks around Nashville, Knoxville, Chattanooga, and Clarksville wanted, boy, they might as well be Democrats. I mean, in many cases, we're on legal immigration, like functionally, I don't see any daylight hardly between Republicans and Democrats. I don't. They're letting it happen. They've let it happen for the last 4 years that I've been reporting the news. I mean, what's the difference? Democrats have continued to let it happen. Republicans are continuing to let it happen. What's the difference? I can't see any. The retirement of Darren Jernigan in southeast Nashville has given the GOP hope it can boost former Republican caucus aide Chad Bobo in his race against Democrat Shondell Brooks. It's funny, in a podcast, I said, hey, I wonder if Chad Bobo is related to Norman Bobo. I didn't think anything about it because I didn't know who he was. And one of our subscribers text message said, you know that Chad Bobo is black. And I said, well, that is just another indication of how colorblind I am. I don't care what color he is, as long as he's conservative. I don't care. You can be the color, all the colors of the rainbow. You can change colors. You can be a chameleon. If you're a conservative chameleon, Brandon Lewis is going to support you. State Republicans also plan to boost Wyatt Rampey in his attempt to unseat Democrat Heidi Campbell in her seat that wraps around Nashville. In some cases, the incumbents do face a cash disadvantage. Allie Phillips, the Democrat candidate of Clarksville House District 75, has raised more than her opponent Jeff Burkhart with $186,000 in the bank compared to his $85,000. We shall see. We shall see. In Tennessee, apparently that one didn't take. In Tennessee, the general election is interesting occasionally, but all your decisions are made in the primaries in Tennessee. And that's why we got to be focused on those coming up in 2 years. I know, here I am talking about the next election, and we're not even through the general of this one. That's how you got to do it. Long-term vision. Senator Mark Pody, who is a true conservative, wants to put further limits on Tennessee governor's emergency powers. Senator Mark Pody is planning an effort to limit the governor's authority during state emergencies after obtaining an attorney general's opinion on the separations of powers. Pody said he is concerned about the potential for the governor to override the legislature with orders that have the power of law after the COVID-19 pandemic based upon a state of emergency measure passed in 2000. The abuses of that are awful. How many small businesses did Bill Lee put out of business? How many houses of worship never opened their doors again? How many people lived in fear? How many people died alone because Bill Lee would not uphold his constitutional oath of office? These emergency powers were meant for tornadoes, earthquakes, nuclear meltdowns. Like we got people that are going to die if we don't get in there and move folks around. It wasn't made for, there's something that's like a really bad flu, and if you're really old and sick, it may kill you. If you've got complicated health problems, it may kill you. But everybody else just needs to go live their life. No, that's not what we had. And here's another thing. Every time this has been brought to the legislature, they've killed it. When did the legislature neuter itself from being a separate branch of government? Why would the legislature not want to have a say as 1/3 of the governing apparatus in the state of Tennessee to check a governor that might want to do things that would harm Tennesseans that isn't in his constitutional purview to do? This seems like, I always thought, and I've said this before, during COVID, I always thought that at some point the power-hungry self-interest of the legislature would have risen up and said, you can't just continue to do this stuff. But what happened was none of them wanted to be the person that was wrong. that made a tough decision, and so they just hid behind Bill Lee's coattails during the pandemic. Well, that would not have happened if something like this had been done where the legislature had to vote on it and let their fat be in the fire. I just don't think that the founding fathers of Tennessee ever thought that the legislature would lack the testicular fortitude to do this kind of stuff, but apparently they do. Lawmakers questioned the governor's rulemaking power during the pandemic, barely, and dialed back some of the office's power afterward, for instance, passing a bill to limit emergency orders to 45 days instead of 60. But if you can just keep redoing it, what's it matter? Another bill prohibited the state and governor from requiring COVID-19 vaccinations. They also cut the ability of independent health departments in the state's 6 largest counties to make their own rules. Boy, I lived through that with Mayor Jim Coppinger here in Tennessee and in Hamilton County, a Republican in name only. Awful what happened. I'm never going to forget that, and if I keep bringing it up, I'm sorry. I need to be the only person reminding you of this in the state of Tennessee, so that should this rear its old ugly head again, hopefully at least y'all will recognize it and we can get out in front of it early. Numerous churches protested social distancing requirement ordered by Governor Lee, which now we know was just complete and utter BS. I can't believe churches rolled over like they did, which violated their rights to gather and worship. An opinion of Pody obtained August 13 from the Tennessee Attorney General under the state's separation of power doctrine. The General Assembly cannot delegate its power to make laws except in 2 narrow instances, apparently dealing with state emergencies and rulemaking. Which means, hey, closed-circuit transmission, y'all got to do your job that you were sent there to be elected to, not abdicate your responsibility for 2 years as Tennesseans suffered. The opinion further says legislature can grant the governor emergency powers as long as it, quote, is executive, not legislative in nature, which so much of what Bill Lee did was legislative in nature. In case of another emergency situation, such as a natural disaster, Pody said he wants to make sure the declaration of emergency does not supplant the legislature's continued constitutional authority. Hear, hear. If we had about 5 more people like Mark Pody up in the state Senate, a lot of these problems would be fixed. And we sure as heck wouldn't have somebody as corrupt as Randy McNally up there at the top, I don't believe. We're running long here, I don't care. Ford announces second delay in production of electric pickup trucks in West Tennessee. You think it might have something to do with them having lost billions of dollars trying this last year? The fact that people don't, it's a novelty. It's really not very practical in most places in Tennessee. Now, if you're going to actually use the truck for what a truck is used for, to go at any point in time and to get gas and to be able to move on without sitting at a charging station for 3 or 4 hours. Despite already delaying production of electric trucks in Tennessee's Blue Oval City by several months, Ford Motor Company announced plans on Wednesday that it would delay the schedule even more. Where's the accountability for this corporate welfare, Bo Watson? Nicole Watson, when we give these people these millions and billions of dollars, and then they fail to deliver their end of the bargain, why is there never any consequences for the corporations? Why are the consequences only ever for the Tennessee taxpayer? Electric truck and battery production was scheduled to begin at the new West Tennessee location in 2025, but Ford delayed that a few months ago, stating the first electric pickup trucks would be available from the plant beginning 2026. Now, the company says the vehicles won't begin production until 2027. Ford says the delay came about because the company decided to use a lower-cost battery technology. I don't know if I believe that. If successful, the new plan would ideally reduce costs for the company and allow them to increase profits on their electric vehicles, which apparently they desperately need. Critics are not so sure that the change of the date is really about updating technology. No crap. Sources state that while Ford sold 24,000 F-150 Lightning trucks in 2023, dealers are now reporting fewer sales and increased inventory on their lots, meaning these electric trucks are not selling. They are not selling. I think if you're going to buy an electric truck, you buy a Tesla because you're trying to make a statement, right? I'm good for the environment, even though everything that goes into the car is from the coal plants and the nuclear plants and the hydroelectric and everything else. I'm sorry. If you're not charging your electric vehicle with a windmill or solar, it's just a pretense. It's a ridiculous, ludicrous, illogical, money grab, government corruption pretense. Blue Oval City was expected to provide around 6,000 jobs of residents of Haywood County into the surrounding areas, economically disadvantaged counties, where banking on a boost to their local economies. Well, you may have to wait a little longer. Of note, Haywood County is among the 10% of the most economically distressed in the nation, as determined by the Appalachian Regional Commission in 2021. Republican-controlled state legislature joined forces with Governor Bill Lee and with the help of lobbyist Nicole Watson to approve the budgeting of around $1 billion worth of taxpayer funds for the project. If you get $1 billion to a corporation, you think they might kick you back $1 million? I bet they would. Despite the delays, leaders in the state are still trying to convince the public and possibly themselves that truck manufacturing in Blue Oval City will eventually become a reality. Haywood County Mayor David Livingston said last year that Blue Oval was too big to fail. He says he stands by that statement today. Too big to fail. It's too big to fail. Where have we heard that before? Last story. U.S. Supreme Court holds lower court's block on Biden Title IX rule for Tennessee and other states. Thank goodness. The Supreme Court upheld orders from a lower court that halted further changes to Title IX that aimed to include gender identity to prohibitions on sexual discrimination. These changes included requiring schools to allow students to use bathrooms and locker rooms that align with their gender identity and not necessarily their biological sex. Conservatives that are listening and paying attention and care about their kids' future, when you're sending your kids into an environment where there's a possibility that this kind of crap might happen and then there's all the other crap that's happening, no wonder homeschooling is going through the roof nationwide. I mean, it's gotten to where, education has to get pretty bad. Government education has to get pretty bad for folks to not take the free benefit of the government babysitting. Maybe one of the parents has to stay at home, so half the income is cut, and then they have to put money in to educate their kids. When you got a product that is so bad you can't give it away for free, it might need to be done away with or give people back their money. But there's no stomach for the reforms that would fix the education system. An emergent request from the Biden administration argued that those court's orders were too broad and that some of the changes would be allowed to go into effect as previously planned. Tennessee, along with other red states, said the new rule cannot be put into place because it is too difficult to separate the varying parts of the rules. 5 of the conservative Supreme Court justices agreed with the states, agreeing the Biden's camp had not proven that the challenged components could be differentiated from other portions of the law. Scrimetti said, quote, "I'm grateful that the Tennessee Supreme Court of the United States agreed that no part of the Biden administration's Title IX rules should go into effect while the case proceeds. This is a win for student privacy, free speech, and the rule of law." Woo! Those are the stories. Those are the stories. There was some good news. The good news was there at the end. So what's going on with y'all, guys? What are you getting into this weekend? Post it in the comments. I do scroll through and read the comments on the Big 7 more than almost anything else. Post in the comments. Tell me what you're doing this weekend. So what's going on? I don't know what's going on. Today I got to get done with a bunch of work. I don't have to go to the gym. I went to the gym last night. They're going to hang out with my kids. I'm going to put pedals on Ruby's new bicycle. She has learned how to balance on that thing in about 3 days. Done pretty good. Had a couple of accidents, par for the course. We go down our house here. There's a place. Our roads are like this on Signal Mountain where I live. And when you pull into the house, it's almost like coming into a state park. It's just beautiful right before you get to the house. And so it goes down on the bottom and it gets flat. And so I'm going to go down there where she's got a little bit more space. And when there's virtually no traffic, and let her ride up and down that road and get her bearings this weekend. I'm going out of town to an undisclosed location because I don't know if I'm allowed to disclose it, about a very important grassroots conclave to try to see if we can do anything in the state General Assembly to actually make them occasionally vote the will of the GOP primary voter. That'd be handy. So I got to go do that. It's going to take up the majority of my day on Saturday, time that I can't really afford to spare, but I think it's very important, so I'm going to do it. What else? Saturday, I think we're going to go to church. That's one reason I got to get back quickly on Saturday. Go to church on Saturday night. I did not go to church last week. I did listen to the sermon live, but we had all the family in for Ruby's birthday. And so you hate to abandon your kinfolks as they are laying around the house. You don't get to see them very often, so we did skip. Hopefully the Lord will forgive me. So we did that, and then Sunday, I got to make preparations. I've got a big thing going on in San Antonio for my other company that I'm responsible for, and I've got to make sure I've got all my ducks in a row for that. I did kill a bunch of weeds around the house. I know that y'all are worried about the weeds taking over the Lewis household, but I fought them back. I'll probably end up with like 5 different kinds of cancer. I only spray Roundup about 5 or 6 times a year, and I try to keep it off of me. But man, if I didn't do that, I'd be weed eating every day. It'd be a mess. And so we've got this area out in the woods where we've got a rope swing and a small, short zip line. And so I've got to go get that thing tidied up. And the trees just fall all over the place. Got to get some trees down. I got to cut up some wood. We had a big, huge limb fall in the yard, really like, the size of a small tree. Got to get those things away from the house. During construction, I tried to save as many trees as I could. And some of them, because of all the ground being disturbed, etc., just ain't going to make it. Ain't going to make it. So, unfortunately, we got to cut them up, but that means we'll have lots of firewood. Lots of firewood this year coming into the winter. One of my friends from Cumming, Georgia, fraternity brother of mine, text messaged me and said, hey, it's going to be getting kind of cool this weekend. You think y'all might have a fire at the Lewis house? I'm like, I don't know if it gets cool enough. I don't know. Are the temperatures supposed to drop? I assume they are. So that's what's going on in my world. Work, family, worship, shenanigans, political intrigue, politics. I wish it'd just take care of itself. I'm tired of working on it, to be honest. But here's the thing. If y'all keep supporting me, I'll keep working on it. And there's nothing that tells me y'all care. If you want to, I always say, if you want to see what's in a man's heart, see where he spends his money. See where he spends his time. So guys, help us. TennesseeConservativeNews.com/support, P.O. Box 625, Signal Mountain, Tennessee 37377. I've got some initiatives that are coming up. And have y'all noticed that I'm about to send out an email. I'm going to ask Jason Vaughn if it's okay and if I'm clear to tell people we have a new website. I'm sure most of you know. You have seen it. I should do a better job announcing these things with fanfare. But we have launched the Tennessee Conservative News site. You can actually create a profile. And in order to be able to comment, some people are aggravated about that. But Jason was having to get up every morning and freaking delete 1,000 spam bot comments, and we just don't have the resources for him to spend time doing things that aren't value add to you. And you can submit your conservative club and or Republican events to our calendar. We've got a calendar. We've been wanting this forever, and we finally got it. So if your conservative club is having an event, a speaker, even if it's just your recurring monthly meeting, get in there and put it on there. Maybe somebody will find you. It happens all the time. I often say, the Tennessee Conservative is like the Holy Spirit. Wherever 2 conservatives are gathered, we're there also. So if you post those things on the calendar, we'll try to get it out to some other people. And we always include mentions in the newsletter. So if you've got an event that your club is putting on and you want us to mention it in the newsletter, we do it. We do it. If it's a grassroots group, if it's some kind of outside big national thing, we will make them spend money on advertising. But I try to support the grassroots in the community, which is one reason why I am spending 5 hours in the car on Saturday. I put my time and I put my money where my mouth is. We need more conservatives to do the same, and I'm glad to have you with me doing it more next week on a couple of initiatives that I'm going to be pushing that I think we can pull off in this upcoming legislative session with your help. Stay tuned. Brandon Lewis here with the Tennessee Conservative 10Con Big 7. Until next weekend, it's old BL signing off. Love you guys. Have a good weekend.